the stuff that you're saying is just, as I'm listening to you, I understand what you're talking about, but you've gone into it in much more depth than I ever have. And I keep coming away with this feeling like this is, the problem is much worse than what I've imagined. It's just huge all over the place. And my desire to be involved with this, what happened to me was nothing like what's happened to many people. But I just thought, wait a minute, it's wrong. It's completely wrong. And what I see happens with this whole, whether it's the family abuse, family destruction industry, or the court system, I look at that as being an attack, not just on the individual, but they're attacking my kids, they're attacking my grandkids. The direct attack may come to me, or to you, or whomever, but they're also attacking other people. For example, I've got a friend, I'm not going to mention his name, but he used to have his own company, employed people, 20 people or so, and when he went through this whole process, he no longer employs people, no longer has a business. He now has said, I am a ward of the welfare state. So the effects upon him, what he went through, you might say, well, this is one individual, but it has now spread to at least 20 other families. He talks about his own kids. They are the indirect targets of what has taken place. What I've said is this, and excuse me for speaking this bluntly, but I'll be damned if I'm going to let this happen to my grandkids. Because I am not taking the stand right now. I'm not sure what I can and can't do, but I want my grandkids to know that I was there fighting for them. I will never let them say, well, Grandpa, why did you not say anything? So my question to you is, can you tell me more about what the remonstrance is, how we can practically work this out, and how what you've done here in Tennessee, how we can do it, and what other people are doing, how we can do this in Texas, how we can do this everywhere. Because we've got to fix the system. Again, it's not just the individual that's being attacked. I look at this as being an attack on everybody, either, if not directly, indirectly. And in part because when you look at things like trauma reenactment, if kids go through this and they are traumatized, there is this whole phenomenon of trauma reenactment. So the kids that have gone through the trauma, they get married, and then they reenact the trauma later on. It is one way to assure business for these attorneys, for the whole system, everything else. And I mean, I want to see this thing come down. They talk about it in the movie Divorce Court, and I encourage people, you can get a good understanding of what's happening with the corruption watching that movie Divorce Court. It came out in 2014. Yeah. In that movie, there's an attorney driving down, and he sees a couple getting married, and he's like, "Oh, that's inventory." Mm-hmm. You know, and that really is. But the devastation that you're talking about. It is not just at the family level and the multi-generational level. It is tearing at the fabric of this entire nation. Right. Because it's affecting a huge demographic of our society. Right. And it has escalated now from attacking disadvantaged litigants to attacking high-earning individuals, which is a good thing because we know how to fight back. The people who don't have the education or don't have the financial resources, they are absolutely incapable of fighting back. Right. But we're gonna teach people now how to fight back. So when we talk about these rights violations, our president has very succinctly stated exactly what the problem is. This is an executive order blocking the property of persons involved in serious human rights abuse or corruption. And he said, human rights abuse and corruption undermine the values that form an essential foundation of stable, secure, and functioning societies, have devastating impacts on individuals, weaken democratic institutions, degrade rule of law, perpetuate violent conflicts, facilitate the activities of dangerous persons, and undermine economic markets. And this is exactly the problem that is happening with the courts. It is all of those things, the devastating impact, the suicides, the substance abuse that people fall victim to, the degrade of the rule of law we talked about earlier, perjury statutes go unenforced, perpetuate violent conflicts. They have vigilantes
going out and shooting at judges, going through courtrooms, and shooting everybody in there.
Yeah.
Down in Arizona, they had a person down there killed 8 people.
Yeah.
Social workers, attorneys, going after all the people that are causing these problems.
But John, and here's another thing, and I hesitate to say this almost, but I've talked with people when they see some of these things that go on, and the media report is what an evil person this person was that did this heinous crime or whatever. But there have been so many people that I've talked with that have gone through these things, and they sympathize with the person who's doing it.
Absolutely.
Because they say, you guys caused the problem.
Exactly, and that's the media preserving false public trust in a corrupted legal system.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that is. So let's talk about how are we going to heal this nation of these incredible problems of corruption that's going out there? How do we fix what's going on?
Right.
And a lot of people out there in the movement or movements are saying, we need new legislation. We need 50-50 parenting. We don't need, in my opinion, we already have a God-given right to raise our children.
We just need to have it preserved, protected, and enforced.
We need to return to rule of law.
Right.
There's groups out there doing the corruption acts and some of these. We don't need corruption laws, and besides, we already have criminal statute. Person injures or oppresses your rights under color of law is committing a crime under 18 U.S.C. section 242 if it's in conspiracy in violation of 241. We have the ability to bring civil suit against them under 42, 1983, and 86. And the courts never enforce them. We do not need legislation. What we need is to restore justice back to our courts and hold bad actors accountable for the crimes that they commit against the people, because what we're talking about here is tearing at the fabric of our nation.
Yeah.
It is going to destroy this country. It is almost, in my opinion, I think too late. We're reaching a point where it's time for pitchforks and torches and time for revolution.
Yeah.
I think we can avoid that.
By the remonstrance process.
I think we can. I think we can solve this problem. Now, you think about this. In the 1970s, they put in place these judicial oversight agencies because they knew they had a problem. They enacted 42 U.S.C. section 1983 for people that violate your rights under color of law. You can bring civil suit, but they're never enacted.
Yeah.
And what those statutes are is trickery. They are put in place to deceive us that we are supposed to go to the judiciary to protect us from the judiciary.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work.
Yeah.
These guys never hold themselves accountable. Yeah. We talked about the auditor's compilation report that I did proving that judicial oversight agencies across 18 states dismissed 100% of complaints are dismissed.
Yeah.
It's a proven fact using their own annual reports.
Yeah.
So how do we begin to correct this problem? Well, first of all, we've got to stop being deceived and thinking that we need to go to the judiciary for justice.
Right.
We don't. We go to our representatives. In the United States Constitution, in the First Amendment, we have a right of free speech. But the last clause says that we have the right to petition the government for redress of grievance. And we don't know what that means anymore.
Right.
The framers knew what that meant.
Right.
But the people of today don't know. In the Tennessee Constitution, Article 1 is our Declaration of Rights. People go to your state constitutions. They provide you an incredible amount of protection against injustice. We need to look back to our state constitutions. In Tennessee Constitution, Article 1, Declaration of Rights, Section 23, citizens have a right to instruct their representatives and to apply to those invested with the powers of government for redress of grievance by address of remonstrance. And we ask, what's a remonstrance? Nobody knows anymore.
Right, right.
The last remonstrance in Tennessee was in 1850.
Yeah.
There have been one or two improperly done, in my opinion, in 1980s, 1990s. But other than those one or two, it all goes back to the late 1700s and early 1800s.
Right.
Because they knew what it was for.
Yeah.
If you read Patrick Henry's give me liberty, or give me death speech. And that's a beautiful, beautiful speech. You should go read the whole, what we know today is, give me liberty or give me death. But the speech is beautiful.
Yeah.
And he talks about, we have remonstrated, we have supplicated, we have petitioned, and our petitions have been met with further harm. They said in the Declaration of Independence, we have humbly petitioned for redress, and our petitions have been met with further harm. And this was why we declared independence, because from Great Britain. And these are the same grievances that are happening today. So remonstrance, how do we fix this problem? We have a right to redress grievance by address of remonstrance. What is a grievance? A grievance is defined in Black's Law Dictionary as an injury because it's unjust. And that's what's happening in our courts today, is injustice.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's an injury because of injustice, or because it's discriminatory, or it's because it's oppressive. When you're no longer provided equal protection and your right of due process is violated, that's oppressive. And that's a grievance that is properly addressed in remonstrance. Now, what is a remonstrance? Remonstrance is defined in Black's Law Dictionary as a formal protest against the policy or conduct of the government or certain officials drawn up and presented by aggrieved citizens. Now, I want to touch on this about how corrupt our legal profession is. We talked about in another segment, Thomas Jefferson said that the judiciary is an irresponsible body working like gravity, and by night and by day, and like a thief over the field of jurisdiction. Key word there, thief over the field of jurisdiction, irresponsible body. So let's look at the difference between Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition, written back, I think it was in the 1970s, and the 10th edition, which I think is in 2000 or something. I'm not sure on the dates exactly. But in the 5th edition, it says that remonstrance is a formal protest drawn up and presented by aggrieved citizens. In the 10th edition, it says a formal complaint against government policy actions or officials. So they took
Where's
out
the aggrieved citizens?
They took out the part of the death. Now, remonstrance goes back to the 12th century, and I think one of the first ones where that term came from happened in the Netherlands. I think it was in the Dutch government was where that first came up back in the 1400s or something. A definition of remonstrance from something so ancient doesn't get changed. And this is a clear prima facie evidence of the judiciary and the legal profession acting like a thief over the field of jurisdiction. They're deceiving us, thinking we should use Title IV in civil cases. And we can't use the criminal statutes. That has to be bought by law enforcement, and law enforcement won't do it.
Right.
And they're trying to trick us and deceive us into thinking we go to the judiciary for oversight of the judiciary. We don't.
Yeah.
We go to our general assemblies. We go to the House and the Senate. And this definition between Black's Law 5th and Black's Law 10th editions, where it's a formal protest or policy against the conduct or government of certain officials, drawn up and presented by aggrieved citizens. So this is clear prima facie evidence of the legal profession conspiring to keep us ignorant of what our rights are. So remember, Article or the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, we have a right to petition for redress of grievance. In the Tennessee Constitution, it's very clear we have a right to petition redress of grievance by address of remonstrance. And we just went through what a definition of remonstrance is. It's against governmental policy or government officials, and it has to be a grievance. And a grievance is an injury because it's unjust, discriminatory, or oppressive. So once we satisfy those things, and they're very easy to satisfy those things in our corrupted court proceedings today. So now what's the process? So if you go to your General Assembly website, that's your state House of Representatives and your state Senate, and you go to their website, you might have to dig around a little bit and pass through some links, but they will have their rules of order. These rules of order are very similar to the state rules of procedure that we use in courts, but it's their rules of procedure that they use in the General Assembly. It's how they conduct themselves. It's the rules, who gets to speak,
Right.
and when they get to speak. And in the House, for Tennessee, it's in our Rule 15, petitions and memorials. And Rule 15 says, before a petition or memorial shall be received and read at the table, a brief statement is filed with the clerk. And in the Senate of Tennessee, it's in Rule 22, and it says a petition shall be received and read at the table after a brief introduction by the introducer. I think I might have that. That's pretty close to the language. So in the rules of order for the House and Senate, petitions are received and read at the table. In these rules of order, they also tell you that if anything's not covered, because their rules of order are typically very brief, just a few pages. And they say if anything is not covered in these rules, then it's covered in, typically it's Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedure. I think about 80% of the states, the state legislatures, have adopted Mason's Manual. You have to go check your rules. Some states use Reed's Manual of Legislative Procedure, some use Roberts, but those are very few. Most of the states use Mason's Manual. Now in Mason's Manual, in section 143, it says how questions come before the body. And in there it says they come through communications or petitions, or they come for requests and demands. I've done both. I'm demanding reform, and I filed a petition of remonstrance. Now, when I say demand, that goes back to Article 1, Section 1 of the Tennessee Constitution, that says all power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their peace, safety, and happiness. For that advancement of those ends, they have at all times an unalienable, indefeasible fight to reform, alter, or abolish their government in such manner as they think proper.
As they think proper.
Citizens have a right to reform the government in such manner. It is unalienable. It is indefeasible. It means you can't take away, you can't defease that right. You can't do anything about it. We have a right to reform our government. And I'm asking the people out there watching this later, replayed on YouTube, to assert your right to reform your government. I'm going after and demanding reform of the legal system. In my remonstrance, I'm demanding that judges and attorneys be drug tested. Because it just broke in the news that we've got attorneys and judges whoring and toking marijuana down in Costa Rica. I think it's a very good reason. There are other cases where there was a man and a woman were tortured, abducted and tortured, burned alive, and the case had to be retried, and the family had to go through hell
A second time.
because the judge was on drugs. So it is common sense that judges and attorneys should take drug tests. I'm a certified public accountant. I take a drug test for my job.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't they?
Well, in the military, I was a PFC sergeant, whatever.
And you took a drug test.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was a Marine for 8 years, and I took drug tests multiple times.
Multiple times.
Usually at least once a year, sometimes twice a year.
Yeah.
I had to take it. The reforms that I'm demanding here, but we can come together in this country and we can demand term limits. We don't have to ask. We tell them, because we the people, power is inherent in us. And so we can demand these term limits in our state legislatures. We can demand that they stop listening to special interest groups and lobbyists and that they start listening to the people. We can remonstrate how to heal this country and return power back to the people. So I'm encouraging people out there to find like-minded citizens. We can all agree on corruption and that corruption should go away. I think almost everyone agrees that there should be term limits in Congress. We can demand those things by petition of remonstrance. So if we go on in section 148 of Mason's, it talks about a petition is a written document addressed to the legislative body in which it is to be presented. And they go through and they describe the body of the document and how it's put together. And in section 148, paragraph 4, it says a petition is presented to the body by petitioners themselves. By petitioners themselves. That means we have a right to address our General Assembly and petition them by address of remonstrance. This is according to their rules. It is a constitutionally protected right. You know, this crap about we need another law for this or we need another law for that. No, we don't. We already have laws for corruption, like 18 U.S.C. section 1346 is for public official corruption. 18 U.S.C. 241 and 242 is to incarcerate these corrupt judges who violate, injure, and oppress constitutionally protected rights. The laws are already there, but they're not enforced. So for us to think that, well, if we enact one more law, we're going to heal this nation and restore justice, don't be fooled. One more law is not going to get us any more than the last damn law got us. Pardon my French on that, but I get a little pissed off with this. That people, this is a clear intent, in my opinion, by the establishment to start to pacify us and make us think that, well, we need one more law.
So, no, we don't. The multiplicity of laws, you know, like you said, more laws, more laws, more laws, more laws. It can either serve to criminalize everybody, or it can be served to cover as a cloak for evil, because you end up with conflicting laws.
They're misconstrued all the time.
Right. And so, but go ahead. I'll let you continue here.
So now, in Mason's manual, section 518, a legislative body cannot delegate its powers. The power of any legislative body to enact legislation or take final action requiring the use of discretion. And that when you remonstrate, they have to use their discretion. And according to their rules, that cannot be delegated to a minority, to a committee, officers, members, or to another body. So the entire General Assembly has to decide your remonstrance if they follow their own rules.
Right.
There is a wealth of procedure that we can use against them. So for instance, I'm attacking the legal profession and the judicial profession because they are absolutely corrupt. They are held above the law. They routinely violate rights and perpetrate crimes under color of law. So in section 522, members voting on a question in which they have a personal interest, it says, it is a general rule that no member can vote on a question in which they have a direct personal or pecuniary interest. So I've demanded that the members of the bar who are sitting in legislative seats disqualify.
As they should be.
And in my case, Representative Garrett recognized that he should disqualify, and he disqualified himself. So very obviously, the fact that I have one representative disqualified substantiates my asking them to disqualify.
Right.
So as we go through this document, and this is available on my website, wethepeoplev50.com. So it's wethepeople, V as in Victor, 50.com. If you go to that website and you go to resource documents, I have a copy of my petition of remonstrance. And in this document, you know, it starts off, you can look at it on the website, there's a title page. And at the top it says, in the 111th Congressional Session of the General Assembly of the State of Tennessee. That's required. According to the rules, who is it addressed to? That's who mine is addressed to. It's very similar. Actually, the format that I used is a Supreme Court brief format, is the presentation that I put this in. Very same format that I used in the Supreme Court of the United States.
Except that it's not cardstock and it's not in a book format.
And if you go back, what he's talking about is these ridiculous booklets that you have to file in the Supreme Court of the United States where they require you to print it on cardstock. Which is denial of access to the courts by our corrupt Supreme Court of the United States, who seeks to deny fair due process by complicating the process and putting stupid, ridiculous barriers in front of the people so that they cannot have their cases filed in the Supreme Court of the United States. They're corrupt there too. This corruption runs from top to bottom. And again, if the Supreme Court of the United States were doing their damn job and they were holding bad actor judges accountable for violating rights, then this wouldn't be happening in the lower courts.
Right.
So, like for example, if you go back to the 1950s and earlier, there are numerous opinions that talk about the right of due process and it's a right to be heard.
Yes.
And there was a case where
Meaningfully heard.
yeah, and Armstrong v. Manzo. There's several cases in the Supreme Court of the United States that talk about a right of due process includes a right to be heard. It includes a right to confront adverse witness testimony, and it includes a right to present oral argument. The Supreme Court said that back in the 1950s, and they did that in cases where the litigants were deprived due process. Very obviously, that's why they said that in their opinion. Well, now Chief Justice Roberts, who's our current Chief Justice, he said there's only two reasons that a judge should disqualify. And that's when they have a personal interest in the case. And he ignores the fact that section, or 28 U.S.C. section 455 says that a judge should disqualify when a person reasonably questions their impartiality. And Chief Justice Roberts ignores the United States Code in 28 U.S.C. section 455. I filed a motion to disqualify all justices of the Supreme Court of the United States because it is clear if they were doing their job, and they're not, if they were doing their job, this misconduct in the lower courts wouldn't occur.
So let me just ask a quick question about
I got
that.
off on the...
No, that's good because, personal interest and impartiality, when I went into a court in front of a judge, it was nothing that I wanted to be dragged into, but I had to go in there. I did not take an attorney. It was a predetermined decision, so I'm not being meaningfully heard. But the judge comes in and the attorney for the plaintiff or the movement, whatever you want to call her at the time, hello judge, and the judge says, hi Charlie. Hi Charlie? We're in a courtroom, and they almost sound like, oh, they're buddies that go way back. Like, hey Charlie, want to get together tonight? I'm not saying that any of this stuff happened, but when I heard the judge, I'll mention his name, Judge Brett Hall, out of the 382nd and Rockwall, in front of Charles Schurenberg, the attorney. All of a sudden you look at like, are these two people friends? Did they go golfing to each other? Are they going to go to lunch afterwards? What is this crap?
Yeah.
So to me, the moment that I saw that, I knew it was already over. The decision was going to be made.
Cases are all very often decided.
Right.
I want to get back and wrap up about this petition of remonstrance.
Yeah. Sorry for the detour there. But
yeah, no, I took us there. Sorry about that. So I want to finish up on this petition of remonstrance. So the Mason's Manual, the Constitutions, guarantees this right. The Rules of Order for the House and the Senate, and Mason's Manual, or Roberts or Reed's, whichever version your state is using, provide the process for this. Now, the remonstrance itself doesn't have to be complicated. It can be a private petition. CPS took my kids, I want them back. They have no evidence. Tell them to give me my kids back. The judge is crooked. I'm not being provided fair due process. Bring my children home.
So you take this to the General Assembly?
Take that to the General Assembly. You can do a private petition. This is a right guaranteed to us.
But now they're going to say, but wait a minute, if we allowed this, we would just be overwhelmed with these things. We're going to delegate it to this other committee over here. But you're saying
Mason's Manual says it cannot be delegated to a committee. The whole body has to decide it. Now this is why and how we change this country.
Yeah.
If we do have, and Senator Stevens, who happens to be an attorney in Tennessee, he complained the same thing. There'll be hundreds, if not thousands, of petitions based on this supposed right of remonstrance.
The grievances.
Supposed right of remonstrance. This is one of our most precious rights that we have forgotten. It is every bit as precious as our right of free speech, our right to bear arms, and our right of due process.
And what he's also saying at the same time is that there are thousands upon thousands of people that actually have these grievances.
Well, it's an admission of guilt.
It's an admission of guilt. Absolutely it is.
He knows that we have hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are suffering grievances that
But
should be
we
addressed.
don't
by
want to
remonstrance.
see it, and
Yeah.
we don't want to hear about it, and we don't want to talk about
Yeah,
it.
and if there's going to be so many, we'll just ignore them all.
Yeah.
That's an incredible statement.
Yeah.
I hope Senator Stevens isn't a senator in the state of Tennessee for very long after
Yeah.
this. And I've actually called on the other members to rebuke him, and they do nothing.
Yeah.
So apparently, deprivation of rights is acceptable in Tennessee General Assembly.
So I could just give a single petition as a private citizen that CPS took my children, whatever.
Yeah.
I want my children back because
You
of,
have to be able to prove it's a grievance.
Okay.
So there has to be an injury because it's unjust, and that's pretty easy to prove in these cases when they take kids based on false allegations.
okay. And on your website you have,
Yeah, if you go to the website, wethepeople50.com,
Okay.
V as in Victor, and the numbers 5 and 0, which is We the People versus the 50 United States.
Yeah.
Because we're going to reform our state governments, and we're going to return justice back to our courts. We're going to restore liberty and justice for all.
I will definitely be looking at your website, and
Yeah, so
thank you.
So this remonstrance, there's a title page. How to construct that is in Mason's. Use mine as a template, and then you go through and make a statement. Here's what's wrong. Keep it short. Mine is 72 pages. They have all complained in the Tennessee General Assembly. Mine's a whale. Can you break it down? Keep it short. It's a 1 or 2 page statement. Here's what happened. Then there's a statement of facts, and you include your evidence with it. Here's the facts of what happened to me. Here's why it's unjust, discriminatory, or oppressive. It's why I'm remonstrating. And then the redress that you want. Those are the basic elements. It doesn't have to be a big document. Now here's the thing. When you file in court, they have the stupid court filing fee. Mm-hmm. So if you get suckered into suing them in a civil case under 1983 in federal court, then you got to pay $400 filing fee. Mm-hmm. Guess how much this costs to file?
The paper that is printed on?
Exactly. It costs nothing to exercise a right guaranteed to us in our Constitution, which is a right to petition for redress by address of remonstrance.
Do you send this to every single member of the House then, or the Senate, or?
This has not been done in Tennessee since 1850.
Okay.
They don't know the process. What should have happened is I filed it with the clerk. The clerk should have read it at the table, which
Okay.
means in front of the House and the Senate. They should have read it at the table. They have forgotten. I'm still trying to instruct and educate these guys
What they're supposed to do.
on what they're supposed to do. But their rules say it's supposed to be read at the table.
Yeah.
And then they're supposed to just decide. Now,
Okay.
some of it, for something like this, they have to go back and think about.
Yeah.
Because I'm demanding abolishment of unconstitutional agencies, several statutes be repealed, and certain reform measures be put in place, like advising people of what the right of due process is.
Oh, wait a minute, we can't have this.
So well, that's one of the
Yeah.
reforms I want. Is I want them to hand you a piece of paper that says you have a right of due process, and here's what due process is.
Yeah.
You have a right to be heard. You have a right to present evidence. You have a right to an impartial court. You have a right to a trial by jury in civil and criminal cases. Mm-hmm. And they don't ever tell you have a right to a trial by jury in civil cases. Mm-hmm. They don't tell you that, especially in the family courts.
Right.
They say, oh, well, we're going to conduct these
Secretive hearings.
Yeah. So that's what a remonstrance is about. Go to wethepeople50.com. There's a template. I have already filed mine in the Tennessee General Assembly with both the clerk and the Senate. So you just walk into the clerk's office and you say, here's my petition of remonstrance. I would like this to be heard. And then they start their process with this. And we have to get the states up to speed. They have to relearn this process. Mm-hmm. Myself and the colleagues that I'm working with, Chris Hallett, Kirk Prendergrass, people from across this country, we're on Kirk's Law Corner, teaching people how to do this. Kirk's Law Corner is a Facebook page. We do live stream on Wednesdays and Friday nights, 7:30 Central to 9:30 Central time. Mm-hmm. And we're teaching people, educating on what their rights are. Mm-hmm. We teach you how to fight back when you're engaged in these corrupt proceedings. Mm-hmm. And we're teaching people how to remonstrate. And we're seeing these filed. They're going in multiple states already.
Right.
And some states are really appreciating. Florida has been very receptive. of the work that they're doing
So
down.
Chris is down in Florida, right?
Yeah, Chris Hallett has filed his remonstrance down in the state of Florida, and they've been very receptive. Tennessee, the corruption's a little more entrenched here, and so they've been less receptive of mine here, and I'm having to fight a little bit harder. That's okay. I like a good challenge. So.
That's why you were a Marine.